If we're looking at a side view, mid-sagittal section, okay, the first part of the digestive tract is the oral cavity. Okay, the labia, okay, is the mouth, is the lips. Okay, you can see the teeth on the side view here. It lets me mark them. Why is it not doing this?
Hard pen, hard pen.
Okay, how to do it last time so I didn't make words. Okay, there's the labia. There's your lips. There's the teeth. You can see the side section of the tooth. See the side section of the mandible. The tongue, which is that huge muscle across there. You got the hyoid bone, which is a bone inferior to the mandible, and it's a free-floating bone. It does not articulate with any other bone. That's one of the distinguishing features of the hyoid bone. You have the larynx, which is the opening to the trachea. Okay. You have the hard palate, which is the very superior part of the oral cavity. Behind that, you have the soft palate. And at the end of the soft palate, you have the uvula, which hangs down from there. The soft dangly thing, as called it last time. Okay. You have your oral pharynx, okay, which is the pharynx as part of the oral cavity. Go right there. That's your oral pharynx. You have your laryngopharynx, part of your larynx. Okay. And you also have what's not labeled here is the nasal pharynx, which is the pharynx up behind the nasal cavity. And that would be up in this, you can see the marker, it'd be up in this area right in here. Okay. So you have your nasal, because the pharynx is divided into three sections: your nasal pharynx, your oral pharynx, and your laryngopharynx. Okay. Behind the nasal cavity, behind the oral cavity, and behind the larynx. All right. So those are our structures from the mid-sagittal section of the head and neck view there. Okay, going a little deeper, we have the parotid gland. Okay, you can see the glandular tissue here. That's your parotid gland, this mass right here. It is the largest salivary gland in the body. And you have the parotid duct. Parotid duct travels from the parotid gland into the oral cavity and releases the amylase and the serous fluid that it produces directly into the oral cavity, just buccal, just adjacent to the second molar is where it ends up in the oral cavity. You have your parotid gland, your parotid duct. Okay. Again, here's real good sample. You can see the parotid duct, that large gland right there. You can see the labia. Labia just means your lips. Okay. So there's your labia there. There's your parotid duct, and there's your parotid gland right behind it. Okay. The muscle that slings around from the zygomatic arch to the inferior border of the mandible is your masseter muscle. Okay. That's the major muscle of mastication. One of the muscle mastication is the temporalis, but the major one is the masseter muscle. And you got your submandibular gland, which sits below the mandible. That's you can tell the difference between the parotid gland and the submandibular gland. Its location and the size. Like the parotid gland is huge. Submandibular is the inferior border of the mandible, and the sublingual glands are below the tongue. There's three sets of glands in the head and neck: your parotid, your submandibular, and your sublingual. And you can tell them by their locations. Teeth. Okay. You have the crowns of the teeth, which is what you see above the gum line. And you have the roots of the teeth, what you see, what's below the gum line. Okay, you can see this is an abscess right here. This is a huge abscess. Okay, you can see all this bone here has been taken away. This is what you see on an x-ray when you see an abscess. You see a dark area above the roots of the teeth. It's where the bone is physically gone from the infection of the tooth. So this is an abscess. That's what an abscess would look like in your bone, because the bone is actually eaten away in an abscess. Okay? When the tooth is treated, root canal, extraction, whatever, then that bone comes back to a certain extent. But that one's a tremendous abscess right there. Let's go back one more. There we go. All right, looking at the mandible. looking straight down on the mandible. You can see wisdom teeth that have not erupted yet, that are cutting through. You see unerupted molar, those are wisdom teeth. Okay. You have your canines, those are your eye teeth. You have your molars, which are the very back teeth. You have your premolars, which are in front of that. Then you have your incisors, which are the front four. And then the canines. You have your incisors, your canines, your premolars, and your molars. Okay. The molars and the premolars are made for chewing. The incisors and the canines are made for ripping and tearing. Okay, the tongue. You look at the tongue. You can see the circumvallate papillae. Those are the very large papillae you have in your mouth with taste buds. You have your fungiform papillae. And what's the third one? There's another form of papillae on the tongue. There's circumvallate, fungiform, and no one remembers. And it's papillae. Okay, it's the filiform, fungiform and the filiform. The filiform is very small ones. Fungiform is a little bit larger, and then the circumvallate are the huge ones that like little mushrooms stand in the back of the tongue. Okay. The epiglottis. What's the function of the epiglottis?
To close off the esophagus.
Close.
Trachea.
Perfect. Close out the trachea. It opens the esophagus. Allows food to go in the esophagus. It closes the trachea by closing over the glottis, which is the opening of the trachea. So the epiglottis closes over the glottis, sealing off the trachea, allows the food to pass over the trachea into the esophagus, because the trachea is located anteriorly. So food has to pass over the trachea to get to the esophagus. Okay, so that's the function of the epiglottis. All right, looking at the thoracic cavity or digestive tract, you can see the aorta coming down. I'm trying to get a good view here of your aorta. Okay, this would be the aortic arch. Then you have your descending aorta, ascending aorta coming into it. Okay, you have your primary bronchi, which are the openings from the trachea. Those are the two tubes that branch off the trachea, the right and the left primary bronchi. Okay, then you have your esophagus behind the trachea. The trachea has been removed, so now you can see the esophagus. Okay, you have the diaphragm, which is that huge mushroom shape that allows for breathing, muscles contraction for breathing. Then you see the stomach just below the liver here, and just below the diaphragm. Okay, see these three vessels coming off the aortic arch, because here's your aortic arch. This is your descending aorta. This is your thoracic aorta. Okay, if you look at this vessel right here, everybody see my little dot is? Okay, what vessel is that?
Brachiocephalic.
Brachiocephalic trunk. Perfect. And the next one, what vessel is this one?
Where's it at? Carotid.
Left common carotid, right? And then this one is the
Subclavian.
left subclavian artery. Perfect. I told you, know those three arteries. You'll see those on the exam. Those are the three arteries that branch off the aortic arch. The brachiocephalic trunk.
The way that I remember that is ABCs with an S. Aortic arch, brachiocephalic, carotid, and subclavian. No, your ABCs.
Oh, that's really good. I didn't think of that. That's a pretty good way to remember it. Cool. All right. I skipped one here. There we go. Abdominal cavity. You have, let's start with the hepatic artery. Okay, goes into the liver. There's your hepatic artery. Okay, you see the artery is more round shaped. The vein is a little more flatter. You see the right lobe of the liver. And you see this mass right here. That's your gallbladder. And connecting the gallbladder to the common bile duct is the cystic duct. That's the duct that runs into the gallbladder. Then you got your common hepatic duct, which is the feeding from the liver and the gallbladder into the duodenum through the common hepatic duct. Okay. Then you get your caudate lobe of the liver. Okay, you see that hanging down, and you got your stomach. And from there, you can see the hepatic portal vein. Again, if you look at the difference between the, why is it not marking here? There we go. The hepatic portal vein. You can see how the artery just above it is a lot rounder. The veins are kind of flattened out. That's the difference between arteries and veins. So that's the hepatic portal vein that's highlighted. Then you got your left lobe of the liver. The falciform ligament, which runs and separates the liver, extends around the outside, so it allows it to connect to the mesentery. All right, and let's go a little bit deeper, slide this down. Okay, again, you have the falciform ligament of the liver. You have the right lobe of the liver. You have the gallbladder. Then you see underneath the stomach at the inferior border, the stomach's kind of reflected up. At the inferior border, you can see the pancreas. And this is your pancreas right here. Here's the head, the body, and the tail. And the pancreas always points and ends at the spleen. And there's your spleen. Okay, that's how to tell where it is. You lift the stomach up, you see the pancreas, and the foot of the pancreas is pointing up to the, heads up to the, points up to the spleen. Okay, so right lobe of the liver, left lobe of the liver, the falciform ligament of the liver, gallbladder, pancreas, spleen, and stomach. Okay, again, there's the falciform ligament of the liver. Okay, let's go to the left. You have the quadrate lobe of the liver that sits right above the gallbladder. You got the common hepatic duct, which is your bile duct from the liver into the duodenum. You can see the gallbladder. That's a little green dot on the body. Then you got the right lobe of the liver. You got the cystic duct. The cystic duct connects the gallbladder to the common bile duct coming from the liver. So your cystic duct is where the bile backflows into the gallbladder when it's being produced by the liver, but not needed by the body. So it doesn't flow in the duodenum, you don't need it. It flows into the gallbladder and it goes in through the cystic duct. Then when it's needed, it comes back through the cystic duct the opposite way, goes into the bile duct, that goes in the duodenum. Okay, so you can see your gallbladder, you can see your cystic duct, and you can see the bile duct where the cystic duct flows into. Again, you can see the pancreas. You can also down here, you can see your kidneys, the right and left kidneys. Okay, you can see your pancreas here. You can see your spleen over to the side. And again, the lobe of the liver that folds over this is your caudate lobe of the liver. Because it's folded out, usually folds over the gallbladder. Your quadrate lobe, your caudate lobe, left lobe, and falciform ligament. Perfect. Come on. Let's go two at a time here. Abdominal cavity. Okay. At the very top, you can see the lobe of the liver extending down. You can see the stomach. Okay. And from the stomach, you have the greater omentum. Remember, the greater omentum is along the greater curvature of the stomach. The lesser omentum is on the lesser curvature of the stomach. Okay. And then you see the gallbladder underneath the liver above the stomach. And we'll just kind of go slide this down to go deeper as we go along. The falciform ligament of the liver anchors it in place to the peritoneum. You can see the spleen. You can see the stomach. If you lift the stomach up, what organ do you see underneath there pointing to the spleen?
Pancreas.
Pancreas. Perfect. It runs right along that at the very, just underneath the stomach. And again, there's a greater omentum, is that massive tissue that folds over all the organs and holds everything in place in the peritoneum. And you see your gallbladder. Okay, and you see your liver. All right. Go a little deeper here in your dissection. And again, you have the greater omentum. And this whole mass here is your small intestine. All in this area right in there where it's highlighted. That's all small intestine. Remember, there's 3 parts to the small intestine. What are they? First part is the
Duodenum,
duodenum. Then the second part is where most of your absorption occurs, which is the what?
jejunum,
Ileum.
Ileum.
Jejunum. You're right. Jejunum. And the last part is the
ileum.
ileum. Perfect. And the ileum feeds into the large intestine at something called the cecum. And you can see the cecum right here. That's that big mass where the ileum feeds into. And the cecum turns into the large intestine. Okay. And just behind that is where you have your variform appendix. You can see a little bit of it sitting right there. And it's not blue, it's a little piece right there is your appendix. Okay. And the cecum feeds into the large intestine. And the large intestine has an ascending colon, a right flexure, hepatic flexure, a transverse colon, then a splenic flexure or a left flexure as it flexes, then a descending colon, then a sigmoid colon, then the rectum, then the anus as it flows through the large intestine. So those are all your large intestine. Then on the side, you have appendages on the side of it, the epiploic appendages that help anchor it. And a little bit deeper down, you can see we have the greater omentum, which is that covering. You see over the peritoneal cavity here. That's your greater omentum coming off the greater curvature of the stomach. You can see the pancreas because the stomach's been removed, or it's been, I think it's been removed. I don't see it. The stomach's been pulled out of the way, so you can see the pancreas. Okay. You can see the spleen. Move that to the spleen. Okay. The superior mesenteric artery, blood supply to the peritoneal cavity. Okay. Again, the small intestine you can see. The small intestine runs all the way across there. You can take the blue stuff off. That's all your small intestine. It's longer than the large intestine, but it's thinner. Okay. It feeds into the stomach with the duodenum, then the jejunum, where all your absorption occurs, most of your absorption, and then your ileum. And the ileum feeds right down here. You see the end of the small intestine right here. And this area right here feeds into the cecum. Okay. From the cecum, it goes into the ascending colon. Okay. As it goes up, you have your right flexure, which means your bend. It's a hepatic flexure, it goes around the liver. It's on the right side, so it's called the right flexure. And then going across, you can see your transverse colon, which is actually right up here. Okay, so it bends and goes across. That's your transverse colon. Then you have a left flexure or splenic flexure. It goes around the spleen. Doesn't show it here. And then it goes down. You have your descending colon, which is right here. You can see the descending colon. That's part of it behind everything. That's your descending colon. Feeds into your sigmoid colon, which is your S shape, into the rectum. Let's see, we cover everything on there. Yep, perfect. And one more deeper dissection. Okay, going down. Again, you can see the tinae coli. The tinae coli are ribbon-like smooth muscles that wrap around your large intestine. And what they do is they force material to move in one direction. So they keep things moving. That's responsible for the tinae coli. They're the small, smooth muscle that wraps around your large intestine. And you can see the stomach, just barely part of it there. So these are the tinae coli. This is around the smooth muscle that goes around the colon. You see the stomach, just a little part of it right there. You see the pancreas because the stomach's been reflected up. Okay. You can see the aorta. This is your abdominal aorta. Okay. Once it, oh, wait, where's the diaphragm? Hold on. No, this is your, I'm sorry. What aorta is this?
Abdominal, because it's past the diaphragm.
That's the diaphragm. Above the diaphragm is your thoracic aorta. Below the diaphragm, it's the abdominal aorta. Okay. And then the last part of the small intestine is the ileum. And you see the ileum right there, because it feeds in from duodenum, jejunum into the ileum, and the ileum feeds into the cecum. And the cecum is the beginning of the large intestine, and it flows into the ascending colon. Okay, and behind the cecum you can see the appendix. That's your variform appendix. Okay, that's what gets taken out when you get an inflamed appendix. You got your sigmoid colon, which is after your descending colon, and it's S-shaped. That's why it's called sigmoid. And again, the epilopic appendages on the side of the colon. Looking at the stomach, remember there's 3 parts of the stomach. There's the pylorus, the body, and the fundus. Okay, the cardia is where the esophagus enters. So this is where the esophagus enters the stomach at the cardia. You have the fundus, which is the back part. You have the body, which is the main part. And you have the pylorus, which is a part where it enters into the duodenum, the small intestine. Okay, there's a sphincter valve that prevents the chyme, what's made in the stomach, from entering into the duodenum until it's ready. Okay, so you got the fundus, the body, and the pylorus. You got pyloric sphincter, your duodenum, where it enters into, and you got the cardia, which is where the esophagus enters. Okay, that enters into the body. And then rugae. See all these little rugae in here? Okay, what's the function of the rugae? The rugae are little grooves in the stomach that allow the stomach to expand when you eat. Okay, it increases surface area, so you get better secretions, and allows the stomach to expand like you did on Thanksgiving Day, right? The rugae were very active after eating all that turkey. And pies and everything else. My wife loves to cook. There's lots of food. All right, further down. Okay, you can see this is a female. You can see the uterus. Okay, that's highlighted in blue. If you take the wires, if you take the blue lights away, you can see the different layers. The inner layer is the endometrium, and this thick muscular layer right on the outside, that's your myometrium of the uterus. Okay? You can see the urinary bladder, that space right here where that's pointing to. I don't know if I can highlight it right there. There's your urinary bladder. Okay. From the urinary bladder, it feeds down the urethra to the opening. That's where the urine flows through the urethra from the urinary bladder. And then behind it, or I was going to say posterior to the urethra, is the vagina. That's the opening behind that. Okay. So the urinary bladder feeds into the urethra where urine flows through. The vagina feeds into the uterus where the birth canal comes down. Okay. The large opening here is the rectum. It's a side view. It's not, I know it looks huge, but that's not real life. I mean, you got to remember it's coming down this way. You're cutting along the whole side of it. So you're seeing the entire side of the rectum. Now, some people I won't go into that. That's okay. But that's the rectum. You got your external anal sphincter and your internal anal sphincter. Okay. What's the difference between the two sphincters? Sphincters are circular muscles that contract. Okay. What's the main difference between the external and the internal anal sphincter?
The internal you can't control.
Perfect. That's it. That's exactly it. The internal sphincter is not under voluntary control. The external anal sphincter is under voluntary control. And on the other side of the sphincter, after the rectum, you have the anus, which is the opening. Okay. And this is your liver. You got the right lobe of the liver. You got the left lobe of the liver. So here's the right lobe of the liver. Here's the left lobe of the liver. And you have what's called a bare area on the liver, where it's a whole section where it looks like the cell's been denuded on that area. You have the inferior vena cava forming from the hilum, where the veins come out, and it forms into the inferior vena cava. You got the coronary ligament separating the right and left liver, and the falciform ligament, which anchors the liver. And you got your round ligament, which comes up in this area here. They don't have a label. That comes up to your round ligament. So you have the falciform ligament and you have the coronary ligament. Right lobe of the liver, left lobe of the liver, and a bare area of the liver. So again, the right lobe of the liver, and you can see the coronary ligament. You have the right triangular ligament. These all hold the liver in place. And you have a bare area. You can see the difference in the texture of the liver. If you look at the differences here, you can see why they call it the bare area, because it looks like it's been denuded in that area. You have the caudate lobe of the liver. You have the left triangular ligament on the other side. You have the left lobe of the liver. And you have the hepatic veins that come out. The hepatic veins come out at the hilum, and they join together to form the inferior vena cava and feed back up into the right atrium. Okay. And last slide. Let's take a real good look at it here. This is the right lobe of the liver, this huge section here. You can see your gallbladder, this area right here. Remember, the gallbladder feeds in the cystic duct. The cystic duct flows both directions. Okay, when bile comes down from the liver, it flows into the bile duct. If it doesn't need it, it backs up and flows through the cystic duct into the gallbladder where it's stored. When it's needed, the gallbladder contracts, releases the bile back down the cystic duct into the bile duct and feeds into the duodenum. Okay, so you see your cystic duct, you see your bile duct, and this is the duodenum. Remember, the duodenum has openings for both the hepatic duct for both the gallbladder and liver, feed in the duodenum, and the pancreas feeds in the duodenum. Okay. You can see the main pancreatic duct running along the top of the pancreas here. This is your pancreas, head, body, and tail. And if there was an organ right here, what would it be? Where my dot is, what would that organ be?
Spleen.
The spleen. Spleen sits right at the foot of the pancreas. That's your spleen. Your common hepatic duct, okay, where the liver feeds into the bile duct. Left lobe of the liver, the round ligament that helps suspend or support the liver. Quadrate lobe of the liver, just to the gallbladder. I think that's all of it. All right, you guys are experts and ready for the exam part, right? We'll probably do 2 of those as a short chapter. Then we'll start on chapter 26. So let's do the quiz. Okay, so what structure is highlighted there?
Hyoid bone.
Looks like a little bone right there. That would be the why can't I mark it? There we go, hyoid bone. Okay, perfect. Okay, what structure is highlighted there? Sometimes it's better to see it without the highlight. What would that be?
Pancreas? Or my bad, spleen.
That'd be the thing, because you see the pancreas right here. This is your pancreas. One of the dots flowing along right here. That's the pancreas, and it points to the spleen. So that is the spleen. Perfect. Okay. What is that pointing to?
The vagina.
Okay, that's the opening down it right into the uterus, right? Because here's the uterus. Here's a urinary bladder, urethra. So the opening into the uterus is the vagina. Okay, and that's pointing to the, let me put the highlight back on. This is that section right there it's pointing to.
Cecum?
It looks like, well, here's the cecum, right? That's the large part of the large intestine. So it looks like this is a tube flowing into the cecum. So what enters the cecum? Which one of these options enter into the cecum?
Ileum?
Yeah, because the ileum is the last part of the small intestine, and it feeds into the cecum. So I mean, because cecum's right here. Here's your cecum. Here's your appendix. Your pancreas is way up here. There's the pancreas. Stomach is above the pancreas. So the only thing I can think of would be the ileum, and it feeds into the cecum. Okay, that's your ileum. What structure is highlighted?
Epiglottis.
Okay, and the epiglottis folds over the glottis to allow food to enter into the esophagus. Because here's your esophagus back in here. And this is the glottis, which is the opening to the trachea. And this is the epiglottis that folds over it so food can bypass over the trachea and enter into the esophagus without going into the trachea and cause you to choke. So this is the epiglottis. Where am I at? There we are. Here's your epiglottis. All right, what structure is that?
Spleen.
That's the spleen. Okay. Your esophagus, your pancreas is just below this mess right here, and it points right to the spleen right here. Here's your liver, your diaphragm. Below that on the right, on the left side, I'm sorry, is the spleen. And this right here, what organ is that? Just below the diaphragm and just inferior to the liver right here.
The stomach.
That's the stomach. Perfect. That would be your stomach. And below that is your pancreas. If we lift that up. Oh, did I put that? Did I go too fast on this way? Was this the same slide?
No.
Okay. What are we pointing at here?
Stomach.
Again.
Yeah, this is your stomach right here. Again, underneath that's your pancreas. Your liver's up above, spleen, stomach. That has to be what the stomach they're looking for. That's your stomach. Okay, what's that?
Labia.
Yep, that's your labia. Those are your lips. Okay, this is the mid-sads that we were looking at before, and that's the labia. All right, looking at the side here. What kind of tissue does that look like when you look at it?
The gland.
It's a glandular tissue. What gland is up there?
Parotid.
That's your parotid gland. We have 3 glands. Parotid's the largest. You got the parotid, which is up by around the top of the masseter muscle, by the temporalis. Then you got your submandibular, the inferior border of the mandible, and your sublingual inside just below the tongue. So that's your parotid gland. And again, you can see the parotid duct sitting right here too, where it feeds into the oral cavity. So there's your parotid gland. 11. What structure is highlighted here? Okay. So this comes down here. So here's all your small intestine, feeds in, comes up, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon. This is part of the descending colon or part of the sigmoid colon. It's really close to where that comes in. Let's see what our options are here. So of those
Descending
four,
colon.
yep, of those 4 options, the best one would be the descending colon. And you have to make a hard argument for a sigmoid or descending because it looks like it's right at that conversion spot. But the best choice out of those 4 is your descending colon. Better be right. Yeah, it is. All right, what structure is highlighted here? What does that look like?
An artery.
Perfect. You can tell the difference between artery and vein. Arteries maintain their round shape, veins become flattened out. So the superior mesenteric artery keeps its round shape here. Superior mesenteric vein becomes flattened out. That's what you can tell when you're looking for an exam. You tell the difference. Superior mesenteric artery, right? It looks like the superior. Yep. Perfect. 13. What structure is highlighted? Let me check the highlight. Turn on highlight. Eat that whole thing right there. What is that?
Tongue.
You got it right. I want to see you demonstrate the usual when we get to that one. The little soft dangly thing. Let's see if we can see. That is the tongue. All right. And this is your liver here. So what is this structure that holds it in place right here?
Falciform ligament.
Falciform ligament. Okay. Remember, the coronary ligament divides the right and left sides, kind of runs perpendicular to the falciform ligament, which suspends it to the mesentery. So this is your falciform ligament of the liver. And again, this is your
Stomach.
stomach. That's the stomach being lifted up right there. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Where's the stomach? There's the stomach. And what is that thing? Oh, what structure is highlighted here? What's that big green thing?
Gallbladder.
Gallbladder. Perfect. In relation to the liver, what is the function of the highlighted vessel? Okay, this is the hepatic portal vein, which drains blood back into the inferior vena cava. So what's its function? Transport blood to the liver? No. Transport blood to the liver? No. Transfer blood away from the liver and to the small intestine. Transfer blood away from the liver and back to the heart. So which one would it be?
The last one.
The last one, yeah. Because it forms in the inferior vena cava. So it would be the last one. It'd be transport blood away from the liver into the inferior vena cava, up into the right atrium, and back to our circulating to the heart, to the pump. 18. First of all, what's it pointing at?
Parotid.
Parotid gland. Okay, so what is produced by the parotid gland? Saliva with equal parts serous fluid and mucus-rich fluid, hormones controlling subject secretions, amylase-rich serous fluid. Remember the parotid gland? Hmm? Go ahead. You're going to say it?
No.
Oh, okay. Remember the parotid gland is the glands are the first part of the digestive system. They start to release your enzymes. Okay. They're serous fluid. They're real liquidy. They're real flowy. And they produce amylase, which starts the breakdown of your carbohydrate. That's the first step of digestion. So it's an amylase-rich serous fluid that will be released by the parotid gland. Right? Better be. Yep, it is. Okay, so that's where amylase is. What best describes a highlighted structure? What is the highlighted structure? That looks like, what's it pointing to? Let me turn on the highlight. Oh. It's not what I thought it was. I thought it was pointing to the transverse colon, but it's not. It's pointing to the tinea coli, which are the little ribbon-like smooth muscles that wrap around the large intestine. So the tinea coli have what function? They're a band of dense connective tissue, a specialized tube containing blood, thickened region of the epithelium, longitudinal strip of smooth muscle.
Last one.
Last one, longitudinal strips of smooth muscle. Those are tinea coli. Sometimes it's hard to tell what they're pointing at. Oh, I didn't hit the button, but it's a longitudinal strip of smooth muscle. Okay. And this is, what organ are we looking at first of all?
Stomach.
Stomach.
That's the stomach. Okay, remember this. What's the name for the, oops, I lost my, there we go. Still see the picture? What's the name for this area right here? This is
pyloric sphincter.
this is the pylorix right here. This is the pyloric. This is the cardia. This is where esophagus enters. Comes in through the stomach. All the rugae here comes here, passes up into here, and it says what controls the release of chyme from the stomach to the highlighted structure. So this is the pyloric. This is the body. This is the fundus, cardia and the fundus. So what muscle controls release of the chyme into the duodenum right here? Would it be the pyloric sphincter, the cardiac sphincter, the ileocecal valve, or the external anal sphincter?
The
Pyloric.
Pyloric sphincter, because this is the pylorus right here, part of the stomach. Okay, and it's nowhere near the anal sphincter. Okay, that's way down the line. So this would be your pyloric sphincter. Correct. All right, you want to go through that one more time? We'll do that, finish up, and then we'll start on chapter 25. Let's do one more quiz. They change the answers sometimes. All right, so quiz. What structure is highlighted? That's a different one. Right? What's that?
Cystic duct.
The cystic duct or the, it's hard to tell because this is the cystic duct feeds into the gallbladder. This looks like it's coming from behind the gallbladder. So it looks like it's not the caudate, main pancreatic duct, cystic duct, common hepatic duct. I would say cystic duct or common hepatic duct. I'd say one of those two. Because see, when you look at it, because this is your cystic duct right here. Because here's your gallbladder, feeds in the cystic duct, and then the bile duct comes down here. The hepatic duct feeds into your common bile duct. So I'd say common hepatic duct, yeah. But it's just real hard to tell. That's real hard to see that one. It just doesn't look like the cystic duct. Okay, what structure is highlighted here?
Bile duct.
Okay, yeah, your cystic duct's up here. Your bile duct's where they fuse together. Yeah, because here's your common hepatic ducts. And it looks like it fuses with the cystic duct to form your bile duct. So it looks like they're pointing at the bile duct. Perfect. Okay, you see, understand the difference between them? The hepatic duct comes from the liver. The cystic duct comes from the gallbladder. When they fuse, you got your bile duct that comes into the duodenum and releases the bile fluid. Okay, that is here's the liver, here's the diaphragm. So what's this thing, this structure here that wraps around the liver?
The last one.
Yeah, the falciform ligament, right? The coronary ligament runs more horizontal. That would be your falciform ligament. Okay. This is we can't see without this. Turn it off. Okay. This is the hilum. This is where arteries and veins enter into the liver. So it's not the superior the hepatic veins. It would probably be your hepatic portal veins, right? Kind of hard to see what vein is pointing at, but no, hepatic veins, not hepatic portal veins, just your hepatic veins, where it enters into the hilum. All right, what structure is highlighted? It's this structure right here. Gosh, it's hard to see. This looks like, anyone take a guess? This looks like the huh?
I was gonna say sigmoid, but
Yeah, because this looks like the descending colon here. And it comes up here, it wraps around like that and feeds here. So it looks like the S-shaped part of the large intestine, right after the descending colon. It looks like the sigmoid colon, but what is it? What are the possible answers? Oh, sigmoid colon. Yeah, it's not the stomach. Here's the cecum, here's the stomach, and the pancreas up here. It's the only one it could be a sigmoid colon. We can see how you can see the descending colon here, and it kind of dies down, it comes up, wraps around, and comes back down this way towards the anus. So this is your S-shaped right here. So that would probably be your sigmoid colon. Plus, that's the only thing it could be up there with the rest of the answers. All right, no one should miss this.
hopefully.
Hopefully. What tooth is it? Is it molar or premolar?
Molar.
It's a molar. And it's pointing to the roots of the crown.
Root.
Root. So there's the roots of the molar. Like I said, that's a huge abscess, but that's what it actually looks like on an x-ray. That's exactly what you'd see with an infected molar like that. Okay, there's your mandible. It says what structures are highlighted. So what teeth are those? Remember, there's your unerupted, there's your wisdom tooth, your unerupted. These are molars. These are what?
Premolars.
Premolars. You got your cuspids or your canines, and you got your incisors. So these are your premolars. I better not miss those, huh? I'd be in trouble.
It'd be scary.
Right. All right, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at, this looks like, here's your transverse colon coming down. This looks like, what does that look like to you?
Descending.
Looks like the descending colon, because here's your ascending colon. This is your transverse. Here's your splenic flexure coming down, and it looks like coming out from here, it looks like your descending colon. That's what it looks like to me. And that's not a choice. Okay, let's see what we got. Spleen. This is your spleen right here. It can't be the spleen. This is your greater omentum. This is this right up here. This is a greater omentum up here. This is the pancreas, which is right here. That's the small intestine. Wow. This is the small intestine right here. So that still looks like the descending colon to me. It really does. If I was going to do it for the test, I would point right here. See where my pointer is? This is all small intestine. This is all small intestine. I mean, it could be, but it looks like the descending colon to me. So I would accept an answer of descending colon, but the only one it could possibly be here is the small intestine. Everything else is way off. But that does not look like small intestine. All right. Liver. What part of the liver is that?
Right lobe.
Right lobe. That's the huge one. Yep. Okay, here we go again. What structure is highlighted? Actually, let me turn the highlight on. Maybe that'll make a difference. No, didn't make a difference. A little bit right there.
Ileum.
So it looks like, I think you're right, because here's the small intestine, comes here, it feeds into the cecum. This is your cecum. And then this is your ascending colon right here. And this is your appendix right there. So it looks like the ileum, but it feeds right into that's one of our choices actually. Looks like it feeds into the cecum. And it's the ileum. Ileum is a third division of the small intestine. Where you got your duodenum, your jejunum, where most of your digestion occurs, and then your ileum, which feeds into the cecum or the large intestine. All right, this is your tongue. Okay, here's a circumvallate papillae. Here's your openings and all that. So what is this right here?
Esophagus.
That's your esophagus. Remember, this is the opening to your trachea. So here's your epiglottis, and the glottis is the opening. This seals this over. So when food goes over, it passes this opening up here and feeds down behind this tube, behind or posterior to your trachea. And this is your esophagus. What's that? That could be the right
lobe.
of the liver, or it's not the left lobe. It could be, it's hard to tell. If there's a division here, this could be the quadrate lobe that feeds over the gallbladder, because the quadrate lobe fits right over the gallbladder. It's a little bit further down though, I think. So I'd say right liver. That's right, perfect. Like I said, something they're not real specific here. 13, let's see what it's pointing to. Okay, so what is this structure right here it's pointing to?
Parotid duct.
Parotid duct. Here's your parotid gland. This is glandular tissue right here. You can see the duct that comes right off of it. So let's turn on the highlight. Yeah, there's a little duct that comes right off is what they're pointing to. And that would be the parotid gland, because the largest gland, it's located just superior to the ear. Okay, your earlobe there. The submandibular is inferior to the mandible. That would be down here. The sublingual, submandibular duct would be around it. And the parotid duct would be what it's pointing at. Parotid duct. All right, up high again. What structure is this? Okay. Just take a look at what you're on. This is a mesentery, so your stomach's up here. Okay, here's your stomach. Here's your pancreas. Feeds down. Here's your small intestines down in here. Here's your cecum, where you join with your ileum. And this feeds up. This is your ascending colon right here. Comes across. Here is your hepatic flexure, or your right flexure. This looks like the transverse colon. Okay. Then here's your splenic flexure, or your left flexure, and then into the descending colon. I still say that's part of the descending colon. All right, let's see what it looks like here. Let's turn on the highlight. So what would that be?
Transverse colon.
Transverse colon goes right across, runs transverse. That'd be your transverse colon. What structure of the liver is highlighted? Okay, so what part of the liver feeds right over the gallbladder?
caudate,
The caudate. The quadrate, right? The caudate feeds up here, I think. I think it's the quadrate portion. Yeah, it's the quadrate of the lobe. Feeds directly over the gallbladder. The caudate feeds over here over the pancreas. Okay, so this is the quadrate lobe. Feeds over it's the lobe of the liver that goes right around and over the gallbladder when you reflect it up. All right, what structure is this? We should know that one. Stomach's up here, it's been lifted up. What's directly under the stomach?
pancreas,
Pancreas. Perfect. Let me just double check, make sure we're doing the right thing. Let's turn our highlight on. Yeah. The head, body, and tail. And the tail points right to the spleen. You can always tell where the spleen is that way. So that's the pancreas. Okay, what controls release of chyme from the stomach to the highlighted structure? What is the highlighted structure?
pyloric,
Now, what's that structure here? It's not listed here, but what's that structure? What's the stomach feeding into?
duodenum,
Duodenum. Perfect. That's your opening of your duodenum. Let's begin the duodenum. Okay, that's the first part of the small intestine. Okay, so what controls the release of the chyme, which is the stomach contents after it's been all mushed together and milled around, okay, to the duodenum? What controls the release? What valve?
Pyloric sphincter.
The pyloric sphincter, right? Because this is the pylorus part of the stomach. The pylorus, the caudate, and the fundus. Okay, so this is your pyloric sphincter. Okay? That controls release into the duodenum of the chyme of the stomach. Okay, here's a ligament here. What is the name of the highlighted structure which marks the separation between the right and left lobes of the liver? So it's this ligament right here. What's this one called?
falciform ligament,
That is the falciform ligament. That's what it looks like. Perfect. Okay, what is a function of the highlighted structure? This whole thing. First of all,
fat
what is that
storage,
thing? What's that?
greater omentum,
Yeah, I didn't hear you.
greater omentum,
Greater omentum. Perfect. This is a greater omentum. Okay. What does it do? Hormone production, red blood cells, digestion, or fat storage?
fat storage,
Fat storage. Okay, perfect. Forms all the lipids around the stomach. Protects all the organs. And one more. What type of epithelium lines the highlighted region? Okay, so what region is this? It's a part of the
laryngopharynx,
laryngopharynx, because your laryngopharynx, above that is your oropharynx, above that is your nasopharynx. So what type of epithelium would line the laryngopharynx?
stratified,
Stratified, probably stratified squamous, I would say, right? Because all the trauma you get from eating different things. I don't think it'd be quite, I think it'd be stratified squamous. Perfect.